Red Bull just found a legal way to fix the most chaotic car on the grid. And if this gets approved, it could instantly erase Mercedes' biggest advantage. Because right now, Red Bull looks lost. 6th in the championship. Over a second per lap off the leaders. A car so unpredictable. Even Verstappen called it impossible to drive. But here's the part nobody is talking about. That instability might be their biggest weapon. Because under FIA rules, if Red Bull proves their engine system is causing that chaos, they are allowed to change it. Mid-season. Legally. No penalties. No restrictions. And that changes everything. Because this isn't about adding speed. It's about unlocking the speed they already have. And the moment they control it, Mercedes doesn't just lose an advantage. They lose the one thing keeping Red Bull behind. At first, this doesn't look like an opportunity. It looks like a disaster. Because nothing about Red Bull's start makes sense. 3 races. 6th in the championship. A car that changes behavior every lap. And a driver who doesn't trust it anymore. That's not just a bad start. That's a structural problem. Because when a Formula 1 car becomes unpredictable, you lose everything. Confidence. Consistency. Control. And without control, speed means nothing. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because the RB22 is not slow in the traditional sense. It's inconsistent. And those are two completely different things. Because a slow car has no ceiling. But an inconsistent car has hidden performance. Performance that appears, then disappears. Corner to corner. Lap to lap. And that's exactly what Red Bull is dealing with. Because the issue is not just mechanical. It's not just aerodynamic. It's deeper. It's happening inside the energy system. Every time the car switches from deploying energy to harvesting it, the balance shifts instantly from stable to unstable, from predictable to chaotic, and the driver has to react without warning, without reference, without trust. That's why Verstappen isn't just complaining. He's describing something much more serious. A car that behaves differently depending on battery level. A car that cannot be driven the same way twice. And that's where the entire story changes. Because this is not just a performance issue. It's a behavioral flaw. A structural inconsistency. And under FIA regulations, that distinction matters more than anything. Because performance is restricted. But flaws can be corrected. Now think about what Red Bull has in their hands. A car with clear problems. Documented. Visible. Consistent across races. A system that behaves unpredictably under specific conditions. And all of that can be used as justification. Not to improve, but to fix. And that opens a door no one expected. Because if Red Bull proves this instability comes from the power unit system, they gain access to something no rival has. Freedom. The ability to intervene. To adjust how energy is deployed. How torque is delivered. How transitions are managed. And that's where everything flips. Because the moment those transitions become smooth, the car stops fighting the driver. The balance stabilizes. The unpredictability disappears. And all that hidden performance finally becomes usable. Lap after lap. Now connect that to Mercedes. Because their advantage right now is built on consistency, clean deployment, stable balance, predictable behavior. That's how they control races. That's how they pull away. But if Red Bull suddenly achieves that same consistency, while keeping their aggressive concept, Mercedes loses the one thing that separates them. And the most dangerous part? They can't respond the same way. Because they don't have the problem. They don't have the justification. They are already optimized. Which means they are locked. While Red Bull is about to unlock everything. But here's where this situation becomes uncomfortable, especially for Mercedes. Because up to now, their advantage has been clean, simple, reliable. They arrive at the straight, deploy more energy, pull away, repeat. That pattern has defined every race so far. And when a team can repeat something like that, it becomes control. It becomes certainty. It becomes the foundation of everything they do. Strategy, setup, confidence, all built on one assumption: that no one else can match them there. But Red Bull is about to challenge that assumption in a way Mercedes cannot mirror. Because this is not about building a better engine. It's about unlocking one they already have. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because once Red Bull fixes the instability, they don't just gain consistency. They gain access to performance that has been hidden all along. Now imagine the exact moment that happens. The car enters a corner. The energy system transitions. But this time, nothing breaks. No sudden shift. No loss of rear grip. No unpredictable snap. Just smooth, controlled, repeatable. And suddenly, the driver can push. Not guess. Push. And when a driver like Verstappen can push with confidence, everything changes. Because now those flashes of speed become constant. Those moments of potential become reality. Lap after lap. And that's when the gap starts to disappear. Not slowly, but all at once. Because this was never about finding new performance. It was about removing the barrier that was hiding it. Now here's the part Mercedes cannot prepare for. Because all their data, all their simulations, all their race plans are based on one version of Red Bull. An unstable one. A limited one. A predictable one. But the moment that version disappears, all of that information becomes useless. Because now, they are facing something completely different. A car with the same aggressive concept, but without the weakness. And that creates uncertainty. Because where do you attack it? Where do you gain time? Where is the weakness now? And if there's no clear answer, you hesitate. And hesitation is where control is lost. But here's the deeper layer. Because Red Bull is not just fixing the present. They are rewriting how their entire system behaves. Engine, energy, balance, all connected, all synchronized. So when this correction is applied, it doesn't improve one area. It stabilizes everything. And that's when the car transforms. From unpredictable to precise. From chaotic to controlled. From fast in moments to fast all the time. And that's the version no one has seen yet. The version Red Bull is building toward. The version hidden behind all the problems we've seen so far. And when that version finally appears, it won't feel like progress. It will feel like a switch. A moment where the entire grid realizes they misunderstood Red Bull completely. Because what looked like a team falling behind was actually a team building something too complex to work immediately. And now, they're about to make it work. Which leads to the question nobody inside the paddock wants to answer yet. Because if Red Bull unlocks this system, if they stabilize the car, if they release that hidden performance, then this was never about Mercedes being ahead. It was about Red Bull being early and waiting for the exact moment to prove it. And this is where everything finally connects. Because what Red Bull is doing right now is not fixing a car. They are building a turning point. A very specific moment where the entire competitive order can shift in one race. Because think about the timeline. First, they struggle. Publicly. Visibly. A car that looks broken. Unpredictable. Difficult to drive. They let everyone see it. They let everyone believe it. They let every team build their understanding around that weakness. And while that's happening, they collect data. Lap after lap. Race after race. Every instability. Every transition. Every failure becomes information. And that information is something no other team has? Because no other team built a system like this. Now here's the key detail. Red Bull doesn't need to invent something new. They already did. What they need is to control it. And that's exactly what this FIA rule allows them to do. Because the moment they get approval, they don't start from zero. They apply everything they've already learned. Every behavior mapped. Every flaw understood. Every limit identified. And they convert that into one thing. Stability. But not the kind of stability everyone else has. Not a safe car. Not a predictable car. A controlled version of something far more aggressive. And that's what makes it different. Because when other teams stabilize their cars, they often lose peak performance. They sacrifice the edge. They become easier to drive, but slower at the limit. Red Bull is doing the opposite. They're keeping the edge and removing the chaos. And that combination is something the rest of the grid cannot replicate. Now imagine the exact moment this becomes real. The update arrives. The system is corrected. The transitions are smooth. The balance holds. And for the first time, the driver can trust the car fully. And when that happens, everything unlocks. Braking becomes later. Throttle becomes earlier. Confidence returns. And with confidence comes speed. Not small gains. Not incremental progress. A jump. Because all that hidden performance is released at once. And that's when the shock hits the paddock. Because the Red Bull everyone studied no longer exists. The unstable one is gone. Replaced by something no one prepared for. A car that still has that extreme concept, but now works exactly as intended. And Mercedes suddenly finds themselves in a situation they haven't faced all season. They are no longer in control. Because now, they don't know where Red Bull is weak. They don't know where they can pull away. They don't know if their advantage is still enough. And in Formula One, the moment you stop knowing is the moment you start losing control. But here's the final layer. Because Red Bull doesn't need to dominate immediately. They don't need to win by seconds. They only need one thing: to remove the limitation. Because once that limitation is gone, everything else they've built starts to matter. The aggressive design, the dynamic behavior, the raw potential, all of it finally usable. And that's when the shift becomes irreversible. Because from that point on, Red Bull is no longer fixing problems. They're refining strengths. While everyone else is still trying to understand what just happened. And that leads to the final realization. The one that changes how you see this entire story. Because if Red Bull understood this rule, if they built the concept knowing the risks, if they accepted the chaos early, just to unlock the solution later, then this was never a mistake. It was a strategy. A calculated one. Designed to peak. Not at the start of the season, but at the exact moment where one move changes everything.